Sometime around the year 770, in the north of France, a monk sat down to copy a book. We don't know his name. We know his bishop's name, Albric of Cambrai, and we know the book, a thick collection of Irish church law in Latin, the kind of manuscript a careful scribe could copy half asleep, page after page, canon after canon. And then, somewhere in the middle of that book, he turned a page and found something that should not have been there. A stray leaf, slipped in among the Latin, written in a language he could not read. He could have set it aside. Copying was slow, candles were expensive, and this page was, as far as he could tell, nonsense. Instead, he did the most monkish thing imaginable. He copied it anyway, letter by letter, word by unreadable word, faithfully and full of mistakes. One scholar later said the copy contains every misreading Irish script could suggest. He never knew what it said. He never knew that the original would vanish and his flawed, patient copy would survive. And he could not have known that 1200 years later, his page would be the oldest sermon in the Irish language anywhere on earth. We call it the Cambrai homily, and it says something quietly astonishing. It says there are 3 kinds of martyrdom, 3 colors: red, green, and white. And only one of them asks you to die. Welcome to Sleepy Saints. Tonight, or whatever hour this finds you, we're going back some 14 centuries to an island on the very edge of the known world to meet the people who wrote that page. Monks at the rim of the map who wanted to give everything to God and had to invent a new way to do it. There's nothing to do here but listen. If you drift off along the way, you'll be in good company. The monks themselves prayed half their prayers, fighting sleep. And God, they insisted, hears the drowsy ones too. So settle in. Let's begin at the edge of the world. Ireland, around the year 600. If you stood on the cliffs of the western coast and looked out, you were looking at the end of everything. No Rome beyond that horizon, no Jerusalem. Medieval map-makers put Ireland at the outermost ring of the world, and the Irish agreed. They called themselves the people at the edge. The Roman Empire never came here. No legions, no roads, no marble. And that means something strange and important for our story. When Christianity arrived in Ireland, it arrived without persecution. Think of how the faith had spread everywhere else. 3 centuries of empire-wide arrests, lions, arenas, informers. The church grew up counting its heroes in blood. The martyrs, the witnesses, the ones who held on while Rome did its worst. When the persecutions finally ended, Christians looked back on those generations the way a family looks at photographs of ancestors who crossed an ocean with nothing. That was the gold standard of holiness, to die for Christ. And then the faith comes to Ireland, and nobody wants to kill anyone over it. There were tensions, surely. Later, legend loves to stage showdowns between St. Patrick and the Druids, but history records no arenas here. No state executioners, no roll of the slain. Ireland converted, king by king and kindred by kindred, with remarkable quiet. For the first few Christian centuries of Irish history, the record shows us, this is worth pausing on, essentially no red martyrs at all. Now you might think that was pure good news. The Irish monks didn't quite see it that way. They had fallen in love with a faith whose greatest lovers had all died for it. They read the stories of the martyrs the way other young men read of battles. And they read something else too, the stories coming out of Egypt. Because when the age of martyrs ended in the empire, something remarkable had happened there. Men and women who longed to give everything and could no longer give their blood walked out of the cities into the desert. Anthony among the tombs, hermits in the white silence of Egypt, fasting, praying, fighting their battles, now against their own appetites and their own despair. Saint Jerome, watching that movement, gave it a name that would travel far. He called that life a white martyrdom. A martyrdom without blood, dying to the world without leaving it feet first. The Irish heard those stories and something in them answered. But here was the problem, and you can almost smile at it. Ireland has no desert. It is one of the greenest, wettest places God ever made. There is no white silence, no 40 miles of sand. And so the Irish did what the Irish have always done with an impossible situation. They improvised. They made deserts out of what they had. A bog, a forest hollow, a bare island in a cold sea. To this day, the map of Ireland is scattered with places called Dysart, from the Latin desertum, desert, little Egypts in the rain. Which brings us back to our page, the one the French scribe couldn't read. The Cambrai homily was composed somewhere in Ireland in the late 600s, give or take, a short sermon, part Latin, part Old Irish, the everyday tongue. Whoever wrote it was preaching on a hard saying of Jesus from the Gospel of Matthew. If any man would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Take up his cross. But how? Asks the homilist. How does an Irish farmer, a monk in a turf-roofed cell, a mother at the edge of the world, take up a cross when no one is building crosses anymore? And the homily answers with one of the most beautiful ideas early Ireland ever produced. The Irish love to think in threes. Triads run all through their oldest literature. And so the preacher counts out 3 martyrdoms, 3 ways of the cross, and gives each one a colour. Dirk Martre, he says, red martyrdom. That is the one the whole world knew, enduring a cross, destruction for Christ's sake. The soldier's crown, the arena. Red is blood, and red needs no explaining. It also, in the Ireland of the year 700, needed a great deal of patience, because no one was offering it. Then, glas martre, green martyrdom, though here the storyteller owes you a small confession. The old Irish word is glass, and glass is a colour English simply doesn't have. It's the colour of the sea on an overcast morning, of lichen on stone, of a sky before rain, green, blue and grey all at once. Some scholars say the homilist chose it for a starker reason. It's also the word for the pallor of a fasting face, the colour of someone gone pale with penance. Because that is what green martyrdom is. The homily says it is when a person, by fasting and by labour, is freed from their desires, or suffers toil in penance and repentance. The desert without leaving home. And the Irish took it seriously in ways that can raise the modern eyebrow. Their penitential handbooks prescribe vigils standing in cold water, nights on nettles, prayers said with arms outstretched in a cross until the shoulders burned. The annals remember St. Adomnan of Iona immersing himself in the River Boyne by night, praying, in his case in protest against an unjust king. Because, and this is very Irish, fasting there was never only private devotion. Under early Irish law, a person wronged by someone powerful could fast against them, sit at the great man's door and refuse food, and the shame of it bound him. The saints inherited that instinct whole. They fasted to tame themselves, yes, but sometimes the stories say to move kings, and sometimes, with a boldness that still startles, to move heaven itself. Green martyrdom, the slow crucifixion of appetite, hunger as prayer. The cross, taken up 3 times a day at the table. And then the homilist comes to the 3rd colour, and here the sermon stops being interesting and becomes piercing. Ban martre, white martyrdom. Listen to how the old text defines it. This is the sentence that French scribe copied without understanding, the sentence this whole series is about. This is white martyrdom for a person when, for the sake of God, they part from everything that they love. Everything that they love. Not from life, not from food. From everything they love. Now, to feel the weight of that sentence, you have to understand what leaving meant in early Ireland, because it did not mean what it means today. There were no cities, no citizens. Ireland was a patchwork of little kingdoms, tuatha, perhaps 150 of them, and everything a person was, they were through kin. Your family's land fed you. Your kindred's honour protected you. The law itself only worked through your people. Wrong a man, and it was his kin who exacted the price. Wrong you and yours. Which means that to walk away, to cross the border of your tuath and keep going, was not just homesickness waiting to happen. It was a kind of legal death. Beyond your own kindred, you had no standing, no protector, no price on your head if someone struck you down. The old laws had a word for such a person, an outsider, a broken twig off the family tree. The monks knew all this. They were not naive. That is precisely why they chose it. They even gave the choice a name, Peregrinatio pro Christo, pilgrimage for Christ, but pilgrimage with no shrine at the end of it and no ticket home. The peregrinus did not travel to anywhere. He travelled from his valley, his mother, his own grave plot among his people, and gave the rudder, sometimes literally, to God. Picture the boat, because the boat was real. A curragh, a skeleton of ash lashed together and skinned with ox hide, sealed with wool grease. A few salters wrapped against the spray. The Atlantic underneath, grey glass, glass-coloured, patient. The annals and the saints' lives are full of these departures, monks setting out for islands with no names, some seeking a rock to pray on, some a people to preach to, some simply seeking, in the lovely phrase of the wanderers themselves, the place of one's resurrection, the spot God had already chosen, where your body would one day wait for the trumpet. You didn't know where it was. You sailed until you found it. One of them, we'll spend our whole next hour with him, was a prince. Royal blood of the strongest dynasty in Ireland. A man who could have been High King and became a copier of Psalms instead. In the year 563, he stepped into a curragh with 12 companions and let the sea take him north, away from Ireland, toward the scattered islands of the Scottish coast. Tradition tells, and here the historian in me must whisper tradition, though it is too perfect not to repeat, that he landed first on an island from which, turning back, he could still see the hills of Ireland on the horizon. So he got back in the boat. He sailed on until he found an island from which his homeland could not be seen at all, and there he stayed for the rest of his life, on Iona. To this day, a cairn on the island's south end bears the name in Gaelic, the back turned to Ireland. His name was Columba. A poem the Irish put in his mouth centuries later gives him this lament, that the sound he would miss until death was the seabirds of Derry. He is the white martyr in Tyre, a man nobody killed who gave up his life all the same. But before we sail with him, next time, our old sermon has one more thing to say, and I've saved it for last because it is, I think, the real treasure on that page, easy to miss in the shadow of the three great colours. Because you might hear all this, the fasting, the exile, the cold water vigils, and conclude that these were spiritual athletes and the rest of us are spectators. The homilist thought otherwise. We carry the cross of Christ in two ways, he says. When we discipline the body, that's one. And the other, when, out of compassion, we regard our neighbour's need as our own. And then this line, from the edge of the world, 13 centuries old. Whoever has compassion for the need of his neighbour truly carries the cross in his heart. There it is, the smallest martyrdom, the one with no colour, or perhaps every colour, available to a scribe at his cold desk, a mother awake with a sick child, a man being patient, one more time, with a difficult friend. The homilist even holds up Christ himself this way. Everyone's sickness was sickness to him. Offence to anyone was offence to him. Everyone's weakness was weakness to him. The monks in the curraghs believed they were sailing toward that, not away from the world in the end, but away from everything that kept them from loving it rightly. The ocean was just the doorway, the cross carried in the heart. That was the destination. Back in Cambrai, our nameless scribe finishes his page. He sands the ink, he shelves the book. He will die never knowing what he preserved, that a sermon from the rim of the world passed through his hands in a language he couldn't read, and that his patience alone carried it across 12 centuries to us. Copying, too, is a slow work of love. Perhaps he carried the cross in his heart that day and never knew it. In the episodes ahead, we'll follow the White Martyrs one by one. Columba turning his back on Ireland, the monks who built their cells on a fang of rock 7 miles out in the Atlantic, Brendan who sailed west into legend looking for the promised land of the saints. But for tonight, no more journeys. If sleep is near, let it come. The monks kept vigil so the rest of the world could close its eyes. They would not mind you closing yours. And if you're still awake, leave with the old question, gently held, not what would I die for, few of us are asked, but the quieter one, the white one. What do I love, and could I hold it with open hands? Sleep well. God keep you. And may you wake wherever you are in the place of your resurrection. Hold ambience 2030S, slow fade.